Thank you, Andrew, for your portion of the presentation. I would just like to begin my part by apologizing for not being here today. I unfortunately had a scheduling conflict that required me to be down in the cities. For my portion of this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on some current events that have to do a lot with pay structure. The one that my group and I chose as the more important of the two that I'll be talking about today is the Red for Ed movement. And the Red for Ed movement is characterized and growing under that slogan, Red for Ed. And it's just teachers nationwide are standing up and starting to demand more for their work. It started with the statewide teacher strike in West Virginia, where the teachers went on strike for 7 days, and it caused a total shutdown of their schools. And now teachers in Oklahoma are also on the verge of striking. And it's kind of weird because you go on the Department of Education's website and they're more or less pretty silent about this issue. And they like to remind us that teachers are paid not only in terms of salary, but in terms of benefits and other forms of pay to make their wages more livable. And now, for most school districts in the U.S., they pay their teachers by slowly increasing their salary in relation to how long they've taught. And this is really common, and it's also done in Minnesota and Oklahoma and a few of the other states that I'm going to talk about. But the big problem is why there's a difference between a lot of these states. Now, if we go down, we're going to look at why there's a difference in these changes in the growth. Possibly the biggest reason that I could find in terms of Oklahoma teacher pay is that they need a new tax. They need more taxes to pay their teachers. And in Oklahoma, in order to impose a new tax, you need a 75% supermajority in both the House and the Senate, meaning you need 75% of the representatives in both those areas to vote yes for the new tax, which even in Minnesota, it's hard enough to get a normal majority of 51 to 49. So I truly can't imagine how hard it is to get a 75% approval. And to put this in kind of a more dire situation per se, the Oklahoma teachers were threatening to go on strike. And in order to stop this, the Oklahoma Teachers Union was offered a 1% pay raise, meaning that all the teachers in the state would receive a 1% pay raise. And that doesn't seem too bad until you compare it to inflation, which was 2.1% last year, meaning that all things considered, the teachers are making less money. Now, in a state highly regarded for its quality of education, Minnesota, the pay structure is styled similarly but a little differently. They're kind of structured like a highway is the best way to look at it. And even if you go look at their documents and teachers union, all this stuff is like public information. If you go in and look at it, teachers are paid based on their education and experience. And those two factors determine which lane of the highway they're placed on. So, for example, when a teacher enters the workforce, say we have teacher A, he or she has a master's degree and 25 previous years of experience. They get placed in lane, say, 25. They're going to start out making $55,000 a year. 10 years down the road from now, they're going to be making somewhere around $80,000. And I'm just kind of spitballing these numbers, but it's just to give you an idea. Then we're going to have teacher B, who comes in with a bachelor's degree and, say, 2 years of experience teaching, maybe tops. They might get placed in lane 2, making $35,000 a year. 10 years down the road, they're making $45,000. Pretty small pay increase. But this pay structure is designed to encourage these teachers to go back to school and further their education. Teacher B goes back to school, gets their master's, maybe even just takes a few more classes, gets a little bit more teaching experience, a few more years. They come back to the school system and they're placed in lane, say, 15, making $60,000 a year. And 10 years down the road, they might even be making as much as teacher A was. Who knows? It all just comes with experience and how much knowledge they bring to the table, which allows Minnesota to have a high climate of competitiveness, which allows them to bring in really good talent, which states like Oklahoma can't afford to do. In fact, another big reason Oklahoma can't retain teachers is because these teachers can go to any of the neighboring states and make $10,000 more, which is essentially like a vacuum effect with all the talent in Oklahoma just being drained out to the surrounding states. And so, why would these teachers want to stay in Oklahoma if they can go make $10,000 more? Who knows? I wouldn't want to. Now, for my last point that I'll be talking about today is quite possibly the most radical pay structure in all of corporate America. I'm sure we've all heard of the man in the bottom right there, Elon Musk. He's Tesla's CEO, and the new pay structure he has agreed to is banking on the future success of his company. And currently, Tesla's market value is around $59 billion. And what he has agreed to do for his future pay is he's not getting paid a dime. He won't get paid anything unless, most importantly, unless he reaches or he leads the company to new milestones. And these milestones are in terms of market share and certain profit goals, but the market share is easier the two to talk about. And this is like in benchmarks of $50 billion. So currently the company is worth $59 billion. As soon as you get to $100 billion, that's the first milestone. Then there's 150, then 200, then 250, all the way up to $650 billion. And each time Mr. Musk brings the market value of Tesla to one of these benchmarks, he will be paid about 1% of the company's total worth. But it's in terms of shares, so I believe it comes around to 1.6 or 1.7 million shares. So if he does that 12 times over for all the different benchmarks, in the end, he could make $50 billion. But if he fails, he could make nothing. And for myself, that concludes my portion of the presentation, and I'd like to hand it back over to my group. Thank you.